Nobody warns you that the quiet gets louder the older you get. 31 years hauling freight across every state line in this country, and I thought silence was something I understood better than most men alive. Turns out I didn't understand the half of it. My name's Hank, 60 years old now, retired for the last 4. Before that, I was behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler more nights than I was in a bed that didn't rock with a highway underneath it. And I want to tell you something about living alone, because I've done it 2 ways. I did it moving at 75 miles an hour with the radio keeping me company, and now I do it standing still in a house that doesn't make a sound unless I make it myself. They're different kinds of alone. It took me a long time to figure that out. When I was on the road, alone didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a job. You've got a cab full of gauges, a thermos of bad coffee, and a stretch of asphalt disappearing into the dark ahead of you. That's not loneliness. That's just Tuesday. I used to talk on the CB to truckers I never saw a face of. Voices in the dark, calling out weather up ahead, warning about a scale that was open past the Missouri line. We didn't know each other's names half the time. Didn't need to. There was a kind of company in that. Men doing the same hard, quiet work. All of us moving through the night like we were stitched into the same piece of cloth. I always figured that when I got off the road, I'd finally get some peace. No more waking up at 3 in the morning in a truck stop parking lot in Amarillo with a diesel engine idling outside your window like a heartbeat. No more missing birthdays. No more Christmas on a headset, calling home from somewhere in Nebraska, watching snow come down on a highway that didn't care what day it was. I got the peace, all right? I just didn't expect the peace to have so much room in it for a man to get lost in. See, here's what nobody tells you about retiring and living alone. The road gave me a reason to be alone. The house doesn't give me a reason for anything. On the road, the silence had a purpose. It was leading somewhere, a delivery, a way station, home. The silence in this house doesn't lead anywhere. It just sits there with me. And some mornings I sit there right back at it, coffee going cold, wondering what exactly I'm supposed to be doing with a day that's got nothing due at the end of it. I used to think a man who lived alone was a man who'd failed at something. Failed a marriage, failed to raise a family that stuck around, failed to build a life full enough that somebody wanted to stay in it with him. That's the thing my father's generation believed, and some of it rubbed off on me before I ever earned the right to disagree with it. But I've had years now to sit with it, turn it over, look at it from every angle a man can look at something from when he's got nothing but time. And I don't believe that anymore. A man living alone at 60 isn't necessarily a man who failed. Sometimes he's just a man who spent 30 years giving everything he had to a job that ate his evenings, ate his weekends, ate the version of himself that might have learned how to sit still in a room with somebody and just talk, easy, about nothing. The road doesn't teach you that. The road teaches you how to be alone well. It doesn't teach you how to be with somebody once the engine's off. That's the trade nobody puts on the paperwork when you sign up for that life. You get real good at solitude. You get real bad at company. I had a wife once, good woman. She stuck it out through more empty chairs at dinner than any woman should have to stare at. But there's only so many years a person can love a man who's mostly a voice on a phone and a set of headlights pulling into the driveway every second Sunday. She didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because loving me from a distance for that long finally wore a groove too deep to fill back in. I don't blame her. It took me a decade after to admit that, but I don't. So now I'm here. Alone, but not the way people mean it when they say it like it's a diagnosis. I've got a coffee maker that's older than some of the men I used to run freight with. I've got a recliner with a permanent dent shaped like me. I've got a dog that doesn't ask me where I've been or where I'm going. Which after a lifetime of both those questions being the only questions anybody ever asked me, is about the finest company a man could want. What I've come to believe, and I didn't read this anywhere, didn't hear it from a preacher or a doctor, just worked it out somewhere between Interstate 40 and the back porch, is that a man alone isn't automatically a man who's lonely. Those are 2 different roads that happen to run parallel sometimes, but they're not the same highway. Loneliness is wanting something you don't have. Solitude is being fine with what you've got. It took me most of my life to tell the difference, mostly because nobody in my generation was raised to ask which one they were feeling. You didn't talk about feeling anything. You just drove another 500 miles and figured the feeling would burn off somewhere past the state line. I used to believe a full house was the mark of a life well lived. Now I think a quiet house, if a man can sit in it without flinching, might be the harder and more honest achievement. Any man can fill a room with noise. Not every man can sit in the quiet of his own company and not feel like he's serving a sentence. There's a particular kind of Generation X man I've come to recognize. Met plenty of them at truck stops over the years, and I see them now at the diner where I get my Sunday breakfast. Men my age, alone, not talking much, not needing to. We nod at each other, like men who've read the same book without ever discussing it. We grew up in houses where fathers didn't hug you, they just handed you a wrench and expected the job done. We were taught that needing people was something you kept private, like a bad debt. So a lot of us ended up here, 60, alone, and not entirely sure if we chose it or if it chose us somewhere back around 1987, and just never let go. But here's the turn I never expected to make. I don't think that's a tragedy anymore. I think it's just the terms of the deal we made a long time ago, whether we knew we were making it or not. We traded closeness for independence. We traded a full table for a full tank of gas and the freedom of an open road. Every choice costs something. I just didn't understand what mine cost until I was old enough to feel the bill come due. What I tell a younger man, if one ever asked, and they don't, not really, not this generation coming up now, is that being alone isn't the failure. Being alone and bitter about it, that's the failure. I know men who live by themselves and they've made peace with it, built a life around it, filled it with small rituals that mean something only to them, a walk at the same hour every evening, a radio station they've listened to for 20 years, a dog that knows the sound of their truck before it even turns into the driveway. And then I know men who live alone and just stew in it, angry at a wife who left 30 years ago, angry at kids who don't call enough, dragging the resentment around like a trailer they never bothered to unhitch. Same circumstance, two completely different lives. I choose to be the first kind. Most days, anyway. Some nights the house still gets too quiet and I think about calling somebody just to hear a voice that isn't the television. But that's all right too. A man's allowed to miss something even after he's made peace with it. Living alone didn't break me. The road already toughened me up for that a long time before I ever pulled into this driveway for good. What the road gave me was 30 years of practice being my own company. What retirement is teaching me now is how to actually enjoy it instead of just enduring it. A man who can sit alone in a quiet room and feel nothing but calm, that man's not defeated. That man finally arrived somewhere